Today we're going to learn about my guest, Darin Garman, a former Iowa State prison guard who became America's top multifamily real estate investors. More of his story and more on the WTRE show coming up.
Welcome to the Wealth Through Real Estate Investing Podcast, your source for real-world strategies focused on creating long-term wealth, cash flow, and financial freedom through real estate. Through guidance, tips, and stories of highly successful real estate investors and thought leaders, we provide you the tools to succeed and to reach the lifestyle you always wanted. And now, your host, Dwaine Clarke.
Hello and welcome back to the Wealth of Real Estate Investing Show. This is your host, Dwaine Clarke, and today we have Darin Garman. He's a multifamily real estate investor, founder of the Darin Garman Companies, best-selling author, speaker, and coach. Darin, thank you so much for joining us on the show, and how are you doing, my friend?
Hey, I'm doing great, Dwaine. It's a pleasure to be here and talking with you today.
Yeah, I really appreciate it again. I've known you for a long time now, been following you for probably well over a decade. You know, you and your stuff, you're the one that kind of got me into syndications, multifamily investing, reading some of your books and things like that. So very familiar with your background. For people who are not familiar with your background, can you kind of touch on, how you got started in real estate? And I know it's really long career, over 30 years, but can you kind of give us a synopsis of how you got started?
Yeah, certainly. So I actually graduated college with a degree in criminology, so I had no background in real estate, finance, or anything, and I thought I actually wanted to be one of these people you see in movies and TV show, FBI, CIA, all that kind of stuff. I actually thought that's what I wanted to do, and I got out of college, and the first real job I landed was a prison guard in a prison in Anamosa, Iowa, called the Iowa Men's Reformatory. And so that's how I started my criminal justice criminology career. And it was during that time when I really started thinking about real estate and getting into real estate. And so but of course, no background, no training, and it was more of a, it'd be kind of nice to do that, but I better stick with this prison guard thing. So about 3 years of thinking about it and continuing to think about it and talking about it, I had an incident happen in the prison one day where the prison security, the other security staff, thought I may have had something to do with bringing in contraband. And in this case, it was a fifth of, Jack Daniels or something. So somehow a fifth of Jack Daniels got into the prison and was thrown away outside of my office there in a garbage can. So of course, I'm interrogated about it. I'm questioned about it. And of course, I had nothing to do with it. But this goes on for about a week, and I'm finally like, I've had enough of this. And now this real estate thing is looking really, really good. So they're done questioning me, and I'm waiting to go into the warden's office. This is after a couple of weeks to finally have, they call it the exit interview about the incident with the warden. So I'm waiting outside of his office, and there's a bookshelf next to me. And next on the bookshelf, there's a book that many of your viewers and listeners are going to know. It's called Think and Grow Rich. That's the title. Of course, at the time, I had no idea anything about this book, but boy, the title looked interesting. So I grabbed the book. After my interview with the warden, I took it home, read the book, and proceeded to finally get enough guts to say, hey, I am going to jump into this real estate thing. So jumped into the real estate business after reading the book, and that would have been, early 1990s. So started in the real estate business then, started out as a real estate agent, didn't know what else to do. How do I get involved in real estate? So I started as a real estate agent, but I started focusing on selling apartment communities around the eastern half of Iowa. So for 15 years, I was pretty much a sales guy, and ended up selling the majority of apartment communities in and around eastern Iowa during that period of time. So got into the business not knowing what the hell I was doing, and thank goodness I was very successful at selling apartment communities. But Dwaine, it took me 15 years to figure out, I should probably maybe start owning some of this stuff too, rather than just selling it. So nothing wrong with selling it, of course, but the wealth is in owning the real estate. And so about 15 years ago, I decided to start owning apartment communities myself and started investing my money into apartment communities. And an interesting happened about that same time, an interesting thing. So some of your viewers and listeners are going to relate to what I'm talking about, especially if they're as old as me or older. So about that time, up to about 15 to 20 years ago, most owners of apartment communities, even large apartment communities, were what I would call mom and pop owners. Okay. So even the larger ones, a lot of time it was a family that owned it, maybe a small company. But for the majority of apartment communities in a lot of places, especially in eastern Iowa, it was mom and pop that owned it. They owned it, they managed it, they ran it day after day, year after year. Well, an interesting thing started to happen where you started to see a switch from what I call landlord owner to investor. And so I started getting inquiries from people and their inquiries were basically like this. Hey, Darin, I want to own some apartments, but I don't want to run the apartments. I don't want to manage them. I don't really want to deal with any of that, but I want to own some of these things. And so at first I started to just refer them to a management company. Okay, I'll just send you to a management company. Well, as you know, and as many of your listeners and viewers know, even if you have a management company involved, you're still involved in pretty much babysitting the management company. So you're not totally passive. You're not totally hands off. So I had now more and more as time went on, investors saying, I really want to own this. I really want to own multifamily, but I don't really want to deal with a management company though, because I don't know what they're talking about when they're calling me, asking me questions and wanting me to do some things. I'd rather be hands off. And so it was about that time I decided it was probably a good idea, not only to, as I said before, invest myself in apartment communities and own them, but start putting some partnerships together for these folks that had an interest in owning and investing, but not being a landlord. So you fast forward 15, 18 years, and so I put together over 40 partnerships during that period of time, some small, some large, raised well over, we're well over $100 million now in terms of our investors and what they've invested in apartment communities in and around eastern Iowa. And we're in the thousands of units in terms of what we own now, and probably well over a couple thousand units in terms of what we've owned and maybe sold during that period of time. The interesting thing about that too is the market in terms of investors and owners it's now the total opposite for me. So again, 15, 18 years ago, I was working with mom and pop, but the complete opposite has happened now, where the majority of people that I work with are investors, not mom and pop. So it's interesting how that's kind of evolved, but that gives you, I guess, the push cart version of me getting into the real estate business, being kind of the sales guy, seeing an opportunity where I should probably own some of the properties myself, seeing an opportunity where more and more investors wanted to own and invest, but not be involved in the management part of it, and kind of working my own agenda in there in terms of building my own wealth and owning apartment communities, but also kind of partnering with other people that really wanted to do the same thing.
Absolutely. And then one thing I had to resume, because kind of learning about you, you said you started as an agent in Iowa. And one thing I started to kind of learning through, over time, you talking about this market in the Midwest, about Iowa, because right now you see a lot of other syndicators and operators and saying, oh, let's invest here, but you've been disciplined in that state. Can you kind of tell me what's been so attractive about it? I know that's kind of what I see is it's a methodical type of movement as far as kind of, market values, and, you have kind of this steady consistency, which now people are kind of looking towards now instead of now so much volatility. Can you kind of comment on that?
Yeah, and it's interesting because the main reason why many so if you would go down my partner list right now, and you'd see where everybody lives, 97% plus of those partners do not live in the state of Iowa. And to kind of piggyback on that, I was at a meeting here some months ago. Guys like us. So guys like us in this meeting, there's like 40 some people there. And so I stood up and I said, okay, how many of you own any real estate in Iowa? And they all looked at me like, I got the blank stare. None of them did. And so when you think about, geez, where should I invest, especially own multifamily? For most investors, for most of your viewers and listeners, Iowa is not going to be the top on the list, right? If you do research on the web, you Google or whatever, Iowa's probably not going to be in the top of the list. So why in the world? Why do people invest here? What is it that attracts people to Iowa? And the answer is kind of a strange one, but it is the answer. And the answer starts with a B, and it's boring.
Yeah.
Okay, boring. So boring is very profitable. Boring is very predictable. And boring is very, very lucrative for folks that want to own multifamily. And that is really in like the big general picture, the reason why most people choose the heartland of America is because it's boring. There's not a lot of things that happen here. It's, like I said, pretty predictable. If you look at numbers, the numbers seem to be pretty predictable in terms of last year, this year, next year, everything from what our cash flows are, our occupancy, what our appreciation is with our properties. It's all pretty predictable. The kind of way of life and the quality of life here, it's pretty good. And we could get in discussions about, well, the quality of life is better over here or over there, and we could, and everybody's got their point and their positive reasons why other markets would be good, and they've got really good reasons for that. But when you've got the kind of predictable lifestyle that's actually kind of boring here in Iowa, without a bunch of huge, giant upswings in market value or huge downswings in market value, it tends to then attract people who aren't really interested in what I would call maybe a roller coaster ride with their investments in order to achieve higher returns. So if you compare what we've got going on here, Dwaine, with what other investments, other places, you're certainly going to find the opportunity to get better returns on your money. There's no doubt about that. Okay. But in terms of having the kind of predictability year after year and the kind of predictable performance year after year, that tends to be, like I said, pretty damn boring. It turns out that a lot of investors like boring because it tends to be pretty profitable.
And then kind of furthering that point there, you had mentioned kind of roller coasters. And one thing that I listened through your podcast, paranoid banker is that, you being a former banker, and you have kind of the skepticism about kind of the financial markets of how kind of the dips and flows, and that is why you kind of funnel most of your money to real estate. And then, like I said, the boring aspect of it, it's not sexy, it's not spectacular, but it delivers the results that you want. Can you kind of talk about kind of like your overall approach to investments, and how you look at things from kind of the years of seeing a lot of different things, seeing a lot of different market cycles, that kind of helps in your philosophy when you're talking to potential investors to consider investing with you?
Yeah, I'll hit upon that. I'm gonna give you a little sidebar though, which it's actually kind of funny. I had last week, I had a group of 11 people here looking at apartment communities and looking at opportunities. Okay, and all of them from out of state, and many of them, not all, many of them from large metropolitan areas. And so it was a little bit of a culture shock for a few of them to come here, and Iowa with a lot of cornfields and flat land, and the cities to them is kind of like a little section of a suburb that they live in, and it's the city here. It's just interesting to see to see how they take it all in. But it's a heck of a lot of fun. But to answer your specific question. The first thing I look at when I'm looking at an investment property for us to get involved in is, and this sounds a little backwards, but the first thing I look at is resale. And so is this multifamily community, based on where it's located, based on what's around it, neighborhood, those kinds of things, and based on the current tenant mix that might be in there, is this a property giving reasonable expectations in terms of performance over the, let's say, the next 5 to 10 years? Is this the kind of property that we're going to be able to sell for a profit? Now, what I've just described to you is not any, you don't have to have a PhD in economics to figure what I just said, figure it out. But that's the first thing, because a lot of a lot of decisions today are being made just based on rate of return. Okay, so and here's something you see a lot of now that you did not see as little as 2 to 3 years ago, is a lot of what investors are, especially if they're looking to raise funds, they call it a target internal rate of return. I don't know. Have you seen this, Dwaine? The target rate of return. Have you seen that out there as of late?
Oh yeah, yeah, definitely. A lot of marketing and people trying to, send that out to potential investors, is kind of focusing on this targeted ROI and things like that. Yeah.
And see what that is, that's code for this isn't that great of a deal going in, but we hope it gets a lot better. That's really what that is. And if you ever notice, the target rates of return are always really good.
Oh yeah.
They're rarely bad. They're really up there. And look, there's nothing wrong with that, especially if it's realistic. But after, so in my mind, and kind of how I look at things, after I've answered the question of the resale question, then so you notice I didn't say anything about the numbers yet. I haven't said nothing about the numbers. It's really based on location, what's around it, condition of the property, tenant mix, realistic ability to resell at a profit. Then it goes into digging into the numbers. And if there's realistic, if we can realistically purchase this property and realistically raise rents over 2 to 3 years at a level where it's market or higher, if we can reduce the expenses as well, in my mind, by at least 9 to 10% over the next 2 to 5 years. If we can get the synergy of raising rents and reducing expenses, and we've got a spread there of, let's say, 10% or more when we do both of those things, and in addition, it's one of those properties, I think it's got really good resale, then it's a property that we will pull the trigger on, definitely. And I'm not a fan of, for example, properties that are hard to do that with are properties that are like conversions. You know, like let's buy the vacant industrial building and convert it into some apartments. That's a tough one for me. Another tough one, frankly, is single family homes. So we've owned single family homes in the past, and they tend to be a little more, you're betting on equity than you are on any kind of income. And you want to hope the residents don't move out where you take how much income you've made over the last year and have to put it back into the property, and then you don't at the end of the day have much income. So we're not fans of that. We're not fans of conversion. I'm not. Conversions, single family. It's we're fans of garden style apartment communities, even as old as the 70s, even late 60s. I'll look at these properties. Late 60s, early 70s. I'll look at those, provided they meet that resale criteria, and provided it meets that criteria of being able to raise the rents and reduce expenses within 18 to 24 months, and then we can have a stable property. Once in a while, we will get into, if a property merits going in and doing a lot of rehab to the units. We have done that in the past. We don't do a lot of it, but we've done some. We prefer not to do those unless it looks like it could be a realistic home run for us. Because you run into all sorts of things that come up that you don't expect when you get into those kinds of projects.
Oh yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but just kind of coming full circle, if it's an apartment community, garden style, if it's in a location I think's got good resale, if we can realistically go in there and raise rents and reduce expenses, then it's a property we're going to take a serious look at.
Absolutely. And one thing I said there is because a lot of investors are not talking about like the resale. I'm pretty sure a lot of the investors who are going to take the ride with you to invest in these projects are going to say, when do I get my money back? And if you're talking about, well, I'm going to hold this and then we're going to resell it and I could potentially get my money back, I definitely think they'll be more inclined to take that ride with you rather than, hey, here's the targeted return. We hope we can kind of hit these numbers and do the best we can. So I appreciate you sharing that there.
Well, and the other interesting thing, Dwaine, is, and I don't think a lot of people think about this conceptually like this, is your biggest cash flow that you're going to have really for not only multifamily but any other real estate is really when you sell it. So I know that's the obvious statement of the day, but a lot of people don't really think about that. They think a lot and spend a lot of time and energy on what is it going to take to go into this? What's it going to take to be involved in this? What's it going to take to own or purchase this? There's not a lot of thought in terms of, okay, what do we need to be thinking of to get out of this and get out in a positive way, right? And not necessarily, so I'm not necessarily saying that you've got to have a full-blown 100-page strategy outlining how you're going to get out of an investment, especially multifamily. I'm not saying that, but there needs to be some thought going into it in the beginning, not later down the road. And I find a lot of investors spend most of their time thinking about getting into something and not really getting out, and so some thought needs to be placed there.
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely 100%. And then kind of switching gears a bit, because I know we can kind of talk about many of the different stuff and things that you're working on. One thing that I've definitely been attracted to you years ago was kind of your brand. Like I've been seeing you every year, everywhere in my email box for over 10 years, and, different multiple medias and things like that. And I follow a lot of your strategies. And you also coach a lot of, capital raisers, investors to help them build their capital raising business and also become entrepreneurs. Can you guys talk about kind of your approach to, building your brand through, your personal story, your market story, and especially consistency, which is to me, I think that's like your strongest suit, is like you just been consistent over the years, every single time getting your message out there in order to promote your business.
Yeah, and I can probably give you a super strategy to keep in mind that's worked great for me, and this will be a strategy that I think, I don't think I know, will work great for your viewers and your listeners. When it comes to really at the end of the day, doing business with other people, or maybe another way of putting it is having people wanting to and interested in doing business with you. Okay. Because a lot of what you and I do, a lot of what a lot of your viewers and listeners will be involved in, and probably a lot of them are involved in right now, is really doing business with others and wanting others to do business with them. And so the approach that has helped me tremendously for, the last 25, 30 years has really been to understand that people want to and have an interest in doing business with people that they like and that they trust. Okay, so this could probably be the second obvious statement of the day, but that's what a lot of it comes down to, is liking the individual, but which is number two, liking what, and by liking, what I mean by that is understanding what they're saying, resonating with their approach, maybe even resonating with their opinion on things. So getting people to like you and like listening to you, and liking your energy, liking reading things that you're putting out there. Doing that is really number two. But number one is getting them to trust what you're doing and what you're saying. So getting them to trust you and to like you is really like 99% of it. Okay. And so how do you do that? How do you accomplish that? Well, that's probably like a 7-day seminar, but but what it really then comes down to, in like a big answer, is consistency. Okay, consistency. And so we all know, and I know, people that we maybe hear from, that we see once in a while, wanting to have some kind of a business relationship with us. And the likelihood of that happening with someone that cold calls me once or twice a year, or sends me a couple of emails, maybe a few times a year, the odds of me doing business with somebody that does that is probably pretty low. Okay. But if I'm getting an email from Dwaine once a day, maybe 4 or 5 times a week, if Dwaine is offering me a book this year on a topic that I have an interest in, that I can read, if Dwaine is having a couple of webinars or seminars over the next few months on topics that kind of interest me, if I'm seeing these things and I'm being the communication's coming to me consistently with these kinds of things, now I'm at a whole different level. Now it becomes much different. So the decision to want to do business with Dwaine is a hell of a lot easier now, and I probably wish I would have done it a long time ago. after I've been watching you and listening to your information, seeing what you're putting out there, that of course I'm liking, and now I'm trusting what you're doing through that consistency, then that not happening. And so it's kind of like building a foundation to your business, with the foundation of really being, okay, what kinds of things could I or should I be doing that have value, of course, but that will interest people and that will have a consistent message about what I'm about, what I'm doing, and kind of what goes on in my world. And a mistake a lot of people make here, Dwaine, is not just not setting down and really outlining a plan of consistently getting in front of those people they want to do business with consistently. But the other problem is then trying to be everything to everybody, right? So unfortunately, Dwaine, you're going to have a hard time believing this. Not everybody likes me. Hard to believe, right? Can't believe it. Not everybody likes me, and not everybody trusts me. And so the fact of the matter is, as many people that I've done business with over the years that like and trust me, there's an equal amount of people that I frankly turn off. They don't care for my message. They don't care for what I say. They don't care about Iowa. They want nothing to do with it, nothing to hear about what we've got going on here. And by the way, that's just fine, and that's the way it should be. It shouldn't be that everybody thinks you're great. You're always going to have people that don't. And so to move forward with that in mind, with the consistency component that I mentioned to you, and getting the information out to people that have an interest in what you're saying, that will eventually trust in what you're saying, because of that consistency, and knowing that you will repel some people, it's okay. It's okay. And doing it, and by doing so, you'll find a lot of people, then investors, people that want to do business with you, will then be really kind of predisposed to want to do business with you. So to kind of come full circle on this little segment, Dwaine, the most frequent comment I get from investors that do business with me, specifically investors that invest with me and invest in Iowa, is this. Here it comes. You know, I've been getting your stuff now for about 18 months. You know, I've been getting your stuff now for about 2 years. You know, I've been getting your stuff for about 6 months. You know, I've been on your mailing list. So I get that 90+% of the time. And once they decide to get in touch with me, they're predisposed and they're ready. But it begins with that consistency. It begins with the liking and the trusting component of it, as simple as it sounds. And it also has a lot to do with feeling okay and knowing that there's going to be some people that just have no interest in you, no interest in what you're offering, and no interest in what you're saying, and to not waste any time trying to be everything to everybody.
Oh yeah, 100%. That's one thing kind of when we chatted before was that was the hardest part for me, was kind of, letting them in to kind of, knowing about me instead of, like I said, being all for everybody. And, like I said, through your emails, through your marketing, I kind of know everything about like your family and your weightlifting competition and the stuff with your kids, and you kind of sprinkle it. So like once someone's ready and predisposed to do business with you, they know exactly what they're dealing with. And then once they're to that stage, they're ready to go in many aspects. So that's very, very cool stuff and very powerful. So I appreciate you sharing that. And that also kind of goes into my next question, because you're putting out all of this stuff, content and emails and marketing messages. It's kind of like your routine. I know like people are hearing this and like, oh yeah, I agree. Let's start doing all this stuff. Let's start putting out messages as much as possible. How do you do it? I run a business, I do this, and how are you able to manage and do all that stuff? So can you kind of take us through kind of you running your business on a day-to-day basis and able to kind of do all this, plus do like interviews like with me and get everything done. Like, you kind of take us through your morning routine as well as kind of your daily to-do list type of thing.
Yeah, sure. So, uh, it, as much as I hate to say this because it bothers me, but you're never going to get anything done. You're never going to get everything done is what I meant to say. And it took me many, many years to figure that out. You are probably a lot of your viewers and listeners are pretty hard on yourselves, or your own yourself in terms of what you might have accomplished today or maybe over the week, or so a lot of times we tend to be our worst critics when it comes to, let's say, what we've accomplished today. And not that I'm saying that you should not be a critic of yourself, because I think it's super important, but understanding that you're not going to get everything accomplished that you want to accomplish, and kind of being emotionally at least okay with that is like the first step. And so that may sound kind of like common sense, but I've discovered over the years it's a problem, especially for more entrepreneurial kinds of folks like us, to at least emotionally be okay and know that that's going to happen. And so then it becomes kind of a focus on what kinds of things can I do and should I be spending the majority of my time on that will contribute most to my business. Mm-hmm. Okay, and really kind of making that list. It kind of gets back to the old 80-20, 80%, 20%, right? So the 20% of the things that I do are going to produce the 80% results I'm looking for. So what are the 20% things I need to be spending most of my time on with my business or career or investment, whatever it is for, and heck, it applies to everything. It can apply to health, weight loss, all those kinds of things. So what are the 20% of things I need to focus on that'll give me 80% of the results? So you want to make that list. And I make that list for myself at least once a month. So once a month, I'm going over and I'm making the list. And a lot of times, admittedly, the list is the same from month to month. So there's not a lot of changes. Okay. Once in a while, there will be. So it's a good reminder for me going into the month. So April's, as we're recording this, it's March. So April's coming up soon. And so I'm already looking at my April list and really deciding what are the key things I need to focus on this month that are going to take me to where I really want to go in achieving, whatever the goals are that I've got. So it's kind of having that list. And so it's important to have that priority list because just going into the day and not having any kind of direction is not a good idea. Sometimes it feels good to be really busy. Sometimes it feels good to be flying around all over the place. But if you don't have a direction, a lot of that is going to be wasted energy. So priority list is number one. The second thing is then scheduling time to work on the priority list. And for some, it's going to sound really routine what I'm describing. For others, it may sound a little bit different. So why would I schedule a time to do my podcast, for example? Why would I do that? I'll just do it when I've got some available time. No. You schedule it. So out of those top 20% of things that I've got identified, Dwaine, I'm an old school guy. I'll use a paper and ink planner. Okay. You can use any kind of planner you want, obviously, or online, digital, whatever. And I'll schedule ahead of time the things I need to accomplish that month. I'm going to schedule them on specific days, and it's going to be locked in and it's already scheduled. Okay. Some things I'm doing every day, for example, sending an email every day. Well, I've got locked in my schedule every day. It's going to be time for an email. Once a week, I got scheduled a podcast. That's on, so that's usually on Thursday afternoons at 1 o'clock is podcast time. Okay. And the other 20% of the items get scheduled. They literally get scheduled. So here's the cool thing about that. Once it's scheduled, okay, I don't have to think about it anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I know when I look at my schedule tomorrow what I've got to do. It's already scheduled. So the nice thing is, because it's scheduled, when really great people that I want to talk to, that I want to spend time with, like Dwaine, contact me and say, hey, I'd like to have you on my podcast. How about this day and time? I look at my schedule. Guess what? Got the free time. Let's do it.
Mm-hmm.
And as elementary as what I'm talking about sounds, it's easy to stray away from it because we all want to feel busy. We all want to be doing things. But in terms of scheduling the time to work on your 20% of things for the coming month, and then getting that scheduled is key. Now, here's part 3 of it. Part 3 is then the night before, I look at my schedule, and I see what I got going on tomorrow, and I make out my to-do list on for the next day. So, for example, guess what this is?
Well, to-do list.
That's my today's list,
Yeah.
right? And guess what I've got on here, by the way? I got you on here.
Yeah.
So I'll sit down the night before. It only takes like 5-10 minutes. I'll look and see what my schedule is like, and I will schedule my day. Okay? I'll schedule it. So, this morning from 6 to 7 was the workout. From 7 to 8 was breakfast time and all that. So I could go over it, which is going to be boring as hell. I'm not going to. But I schedule all of that out. And I do that every day. Now, I might maybe on weekends, Saturday, Sunday, not so much. I'm not scheduling watching football from 1 to 4 o'clock, and then, I'm not doing that. But as far as work is concerned, in career entrepreneurial stuff, I am doing that. Okay. So it's really identifying my 20%. Okay. Once I've identified my 20% that's going to contribute to my 80%, then it's scheduling that through the month. Okay. Then it's scheduling it day to day to day, and following my schedule as close as I can. Mm-hmm. Now, here's where some people screw up with this. Some people screw up with this because they get really rigid with their schedule. Okay. So, for example, I have in my schedule that you and I are going to be talking with each other today for an hour. That's what I've got on my schedule. Well, let's say we go an hour and 20 minutes. That's going to happen. Mm-hmm. I'm just going to have to recalibrate and do the best I can for the rest of the day. Mm-hmm. Again, without emotionally beating myself up over it. Well, a lot of folks would be like, holy crap, I'm a half hour. They start getting stressed. They start having, no. You're just going to now conquer your schedule the best that you can for the rest of the day. Mm. Okay. And again, emotionally know that that's going to happen and having some flexibility. So, a lot of what we're talking about is a little bit time management stuff, mm-hmm. but it's really about identifying your top priorities, scheduling time to work on them monthly, scheduling time to work on them daily, and then the result of that then is habit. That's the result of it. So things that are going to be really important by going through this process, that you get this down and you do it over and over again, day after day, all of a sudden becomes a habit. And once it's a habit, it is super, super easy to do, and super, super easy to implement.
Oh, yeah, 100%. And that's kind of like, because you had also recommended when we talk last, some of the strategies, kind of the same thing of like Robert Ringer and many of the other great authors and entrepreneurs that get so much done. And it's seeming like from the outside of someone looking in, it's like so much stuff is done, but it's just compounding consistency over time. Of course, heading towards that, that 20-80% ratio there to make sure everything gets done, but not stress yourself out and make sure that the end goal is going to get accomplished if you consistently do it. So that's awesome.
Yeah, well, and be hard on yourself, of course, and have high expectations for yourself. I mean, you've got to do that. right? But the thing to keep in mind is if you have anybody in mind that you think really, I'll just say, gets a lot of shit done. Okay, wow, that person, they get a lot of shit done. Wow, look at you, and we could all have a list of people that we kind of look out at and maybe even admire in terms of all of the things they're getting done. Well, here's the little secret. They're no different than you and me.
Right.
There's no difference.
Yeah.
They don't have any special talents. They don't have any special skills. They're just really good at what we're talking about. And so, there's no, well, yeah, but they went to this school, or, they worked at that company for, no. They're just like us. They've just become better at this. And it's, as long as you work on it and it starts to become a habit, I mean, there's no reason why you can't be just as effective and just as, just as successful at getting those kinds of things done, especially on a daily basis.
Absolutely, 100%. And finally, I always ask all of my guests this question, and I know that you're a very deep thinker as well. You're big, close to your family. Is the question of gratitude. So, what can you say that you're most grateful for?
Well, this is going to sound like the obvious answer. I can promise you it's not. I got really like two things I'll mention to you. So one is the kind of obvious thing is I've been very, very blessed and lucky to have a wife of now going on 33 years we've been married, and we've known each other almost 40 years. Geez, saying it just sounds like, oh my God, I'm getting old. But without her support in everything that we're talking about, and really not only being a wife, but really being a partner in what you're trying to accomplish and being involved in what you're trying to do, maybe not directly, but indirectly. I mean, I can't tell you how lucky and grateful I am to have her and to have her be in my life and business the way that she's been. It's been huge. Because I know a lot of folks that aren't as lucky as me with that, and having that is just fantastic. So that's like number one. Okay. Number two is I get up and I don't do like, I'm not like a big meditation guy or anything like that. Even though I think that there's value with doing some of those things, but somewhat related to it is I'm real thankful every day to have the opportunity to try to reach my potential. I don't know about you, Dwaine, and probably some of the viewers and listeners. There's probably at least a small part of you that feels you're not quite at your potential yet. You still got a little ways to go. And to be able to get up every day and be able to work on, chipping a little bit more away at, reaching my, my potential as a, business guy, father and husband, I'm super grateful for that.
Absolutely. And we'll make sure to have all your contact information and show notes blasted out to our network. But what's the best way to get in contact with you?
I would suggest getting to know me a little bit better. You want to go to my website, and it's daringarman.com. And I know you'll post the information, which will be great, Dwaine, but let me spell it because a lot of, Darin is not the easiest name. So it's DarinGarman.com. So you go there, you'll get to know a little bit more about me and what's going on, a little bit more about Iowa and some of our investments and all of those kinds of things. So that's a really good way to get started. And then you'll have the opportunity to, hear from me more often if you want to be on our email list. You'll have the opportunity to do that, subscribe to our podcast and some of our videos too. You'll be able to do that. But a really good starting point for, your listeners and viewers, Dwaine, would be DarinGarman.com.
Awesome. Darin, it was a pleasure having you on and speaking to you again. It was an honor again to have you on and speak to you. Best to you and the family and your wife and everything that you're working on. And I look forward to having you back on the show and connecting with you again soon.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Appreciate being with you and spending time with you today, Dwaine. Thanks.
All right. Thank you, my friend. All right. Take care.
Bye-bye.